Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nichelle Desautels, and I am a field education trainer with Wella Professionals. I am coming at you from Vancouver, BC. It's a rainy day. I hope everybody is enjoying some sunshine elsewhere today. Today, we are going to be doing balayage or highlights to balayage with my coworker Zeina. So I'm going to invite her in here. I would like to thank Modern so much for, again, having us on their live this week. I hope you guys saw Nick's live on Tuesday. It was great. All right, let's see if we can get her.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zeina. I'm a field education trainer with Wella Professionals. I'm in my home in Calgary, Alberta, where it's nice and sunny. Sorry, Nichelle.
Yay.
So thank you guys for taking the time to join our live today. What I wanted to show you guys today was a technique to transition someone with a highlighted look into a balayage. So this is really ideal for someone who is used to being super blonde. They're used to having highlights to the root, and they're that like 6-week touch-up kind of client. So typically when those girls come in, they have really short regrowth. And so it gets kind of hard to foliage and to create that kind of balayage blend that we want to see. So one way of doing this is, yes, we could kind of root melt her, and then she could come back and we could foliage her once her roots get longer. So we could do it in steps. But I think this is a really great opportunity to do a paint. And a paint is going to allow us to put in that depth that we need to see to have that balayage look. It's going to help us diffuse that line of demarcation at the top there. And it's going to really give us that organic feel that we want out of a balayage that I feel like we're not going to get out of a root melt. So, yeah.
That's great. And I feel like this is something we get asked for a lot in the salon since kind of the balayage movement started, transitioning someone from a traditional highlight. So this is great.
Yes, I get asked for that like quite often in the salon, and typically it's from girls who are used to always having highlights. So they're used to always having their roots done. So like this is like a new thing for them. This is a new look for them. So I've kind of already done one side already. I'm going to start on the other side so you guys can kind of see what I did. And I'm starting in the front just for the sake of the live. Typically I'd start in the back just because I like for lightener to sit on the fronts for the least amount of time. But I feel like when we show this kind of technique, we get a lot of questions about the front. So I really wanted to take the time to show the front today.
So we have a question from Hair and Makeup by Mary. Yes, we are going to save the live. The live will be saved to Modern's Instagram TV. So if you want to go back and watch it there, you can.
Okay, guys, so I've just kind of parted her where she naturally parts her hair, and I've left the front and the back. I've sectioned the back out. So I've started with a diagonal section in the front here, and that's just so that the front can fall softer. And we can really see where she has that line of demarcation, where she hasn't had her highlights touched up. And she's got that short root here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of visually look at my section. And it's pretty blonde. Like she's got a lot of blondes throughout here, and she doesn't have a lot of dark. So I'm going to start with my paints here. And I'm just going to kind of paint the side here.
And Zeina, what are you using for your paint today?
Oh, so I'm using my Freelights lightener, and I'm actually only painting her with 20 volume with my Freelights lightener. So a lot of the time when I'm using Freelights, I just go in with that 40 volume because it's a slower lift, as we all know, than other lighteners. But this is a situation where I'm going to use only 20 volume because she's pretty blonde already. I'm only using the lightener to kind of clean up the existing blonde that she has and help me create that balayage shape in there. So I don't want to go super aggressive with that lightener. I'm only using 20, which in the Freelights world is kind of like a 10.
Yeah.
So I'm just painting the sides of the V that I wanted to paint here. And I started on my sides there. And then before I move on, I'm actually going to take a low light, and I'm just going to paint the middle of where she's missing that depth.
What are you using for your low light?
I am using for my low light, I'm using 7-stroke and 7-stroke 3-1 in Illumina. And the reason I'm using that is because her natural is sitting at around a 6. So I'm not going to go as dark as a 6 because I don't want it to over deposit through those areas there. Because typically when someone's really blonde, they're really porous. So I don't want to go too dark. So I'm just using a level 7, and I've decided to use Illumina because Illumina has that violet rosé base. So it's super soft and super ashy, and it kind of replicates natural hair the best. And I want it to look as natural as possible.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So we have a comment from Dempsey13. He says, is there a closet full of creepy mannequin heads somewhere?
Oh, I got more than a closet full. I just got delivered 12 more today. So I'm actually just I'm gonna over direct my section back away from her face here. And that's just so I can kind of get in a little bit easier and get really close to where that demarcation line is. And I'm just kind of blending out that demarcation line just to give it a softer, diffused look. And that's just gonna help give it a bit more blend through that top there. And again, I'm working on my sides first, the sides of my V. And then once I got those sides in, I'm gonna go in with my low light to create the contrast that we're looking for with this section. So what's really great about the brush I'm using is it's an angled brush, so I have a bit more control with my application for this section. It's a lot easier to be a bit more precise because my brush is angled. I don't have like a super thick brush. And then I'm just gonna kind of clean up those areas again. So you guys are gonna notice that I'm not using a paddle, and that's because with these ends here, I don't want to saturate my lightener into these ends. I'm just really softly kind of brushing it on to kind of brighten up those ends here. We don't want any saturation with this technique. We just really want to kind of clean up her blonde. If I saturate this hair more, because she's so light already, we're gonna get more lift and then more damage because she's already blonde. So we're not looking for that. We're just looking to kind of clean up what's already there and create that seamless blend and that balayage blend that we're looking for.
Amazing. And how big are your sections? Are they quite thin or thick?
So I'm taking about half an inch section, I'd say, or maybe an inch.
Yeah.
They're not too thick. They're not too thin. Like this is a really like soft application. This isn't an application where we really need to saturate things. So I feel like we don't need to take super fine sections. And also when we're painting, we don't need to take really fine sections either because we don't want the paint to kind of go through our sectioning at all anyway. So with this section here, this is quite a wide section. So I could take this whole section and kind of paint where I wanted to, but I think what I'm gonna do is split it in two and look at it as two separate sections. It's a lot easier to kind of divide it that way and see where I want the depth in a smaller section than take this entire section and paint this whole thing. I have a bit more control with a smaller section.
Yeah, definitely.
So again, I'm just gonna over direct her slightly, and I'm using where she has that line of demarcation. I'm kind of using that as my guide to apply my lightener.
And what happens when you over direct your section?
It's gonna kind of give it a softer look, and it's over directing my section for me allows me to have a bit more control too.
Awesome.
It's like going like, I don't know, I feel like I can't see, like I need to kind of over direct and lift her so I can get in around her face more.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So another thing to keep in mind as well is this client, she's used to having highlights and she's used to seeing a lot of a lot of blonde and a lot of brightness. So we want to make sure we're giving her blonde around her face and we're not creating too much depth around her face. Because a balayage look for a client who's used to getting a highlight every 6 weeks is going to be a pretty big change for her, I think.
Yeah, they always feel like they have roots for the first little bit.
So I think that's why I also like doing a paint with this application, because rather than just putting a root on and like smudging her out, this will kind of brighten up what's already there so she doesn't feel too dark.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really great tip. So for those of you guys that aren't Wella users or haven't used Free Lights before, Free Lights is our clay-based lightener. So it forms like a network, so it will dry on the outside but stay wet on the inside and keep working. So you're able to lift in a freehand environment without any bruising or bleeding on your section. So it's a really great product to work with for this kind of application where you don't need to put separators in between your sections and everything like that.
I also feel like because Free Lights will really just stay where you put it, because she has such a short regrowth, I have a lot more control with Free Lights than I would if I were trying to foil her or whatever.
Yeah. What kind of mixing ratio do you like, Zeina?
So with my Free Lights mixture that I have here, I like to mix mine 1:1. You can mix your Free Lights 1:1 to 1:3, but I like a bit of a thicker mixing ratio. What about you?
I usually stick in like the 1:1 to 1.5. The only time I'll go to 1:2 is if I'm refreshing ends and I want it to be a little bit less, like I want it to be a little bit more diluted. Do you ever mix it more than 1 to 1.5 or 1:1?
I typically mix mine 1:1.
Yeah.
I like a bit of a thicker mixture. I got a lot of more control myself, but it's just personal preference. So with this section here, you guys, I'm just kind of looking at this piece here and I'm kind of deciding that I wanted to have some lightness around the fronts here, but I kind of want some more depth because it's going towards the back. So rather than do a V, I just kind of put in where I want the highest piece of my lightness to go. And I'm just taking my low light and I'm going to darken this entire area here. So this technique is really visual to how you want to see your blend.
And would you always use Illumina for this kind of blend, or would you ever go to Color Touch or anything like that?
I often use Illumina, but I do also use Color Touch as well. I really like Color Touch because it's also pretty natural looking, I would say, and really easy to apply because it's just more liquidy. So like you could really saturate it if you wanted to, like if you wanted to saturate more of those ends. I'm not saturating any of her ends with the low light because I want to keep it nice and blonde since she's used to seeing lots of blonde here. But yeah, Illumina is more my go-to because it's a really soft, translucent finish. So we're going to get our most natural result with Illumina.
So we have a question. Can we have the color touch the lightener? Is this allowed?
Can we have the color touch the lightener? So the color will probably touch the lightener a little bit. I don't think anything bad is going to happen. But the color will touch the lightener. If you guys wanted to use separators, let me show you a way. If you were really worried about it, one technique to do, I'm just going to do it over here. So you could take this strand of hair and instead of kind of painting it all like I have been doing, we could kind of weave it out. And with this piece here where I'm going to see my low light, in this case, I could take my paddle, if you guys like working with paddles, and just kind of paint on where we're going to see it. And maybe instead of brightening that really light piece, you just kind of let that fall out.
Okay, yeah.
And if you wanted to, you could put some kind of separator here. But if the color touches the lightener is probably just going to eat it anyway.
Yeah.
How's your experience been, Nichelle?
Yeah, I usually try my best to avoid them touching. as you said, in a freehand technique, sometimes it's unavoidable. But that being said, I try my best to avoid it. But you're right. Like, it's probably nothing bad's going to happen. The hair's not going to blow up, but I do try my best to avoid them touching. Yes, we love the free lights paddle, Chelsea.
And the brush.
And the brush. Yeah. So would you ever change, like, do you always work in V's, or would you change kind of your sectioning depending on where you're working on the head?
Okay, so what we could do is we could also W if you want to see a bit higher lightness around her face or in these areas, and we can have a little bit less depth because just around her face here we probably want some lightness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint on my sides here, just bring that high up, and then through the middle here I'm just going to create a W. And then just very lightly add a bit of depth through there. So it just depends where you want to see your lightest areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as you work up, will you do kind of the money piece or that front piece separately?
What I like to do as I work up is I'm going to continue on with my diagonal sections here, but it tends to get a little wider. So I just like to split my sections into smaller sections.
Okay.
That way I can have a bit more control over my sectioning. Because like, look how wide this section is. This is quite a wide piece. Mm-hmm. So instead of taking this whole area, and we're getting into where the money piece would be through there. So I'm just going to split this up into smaller sections so I have more control over this front here.
Beautiful. Now, if you had a client come in wanting that had a full head of highlights and wanting to transition to a balayage, how long would you suggest they wait in between their last appointment? Like, how much root do you need?
Into their last, like if she had highlights this time and next time she wanted balayage?
Yeah.
If we're gonna paint it, I would say you could do like, you know what? I tell them wait as long as you can.
Okay, yeah.
And usually with those girls, it's not that long because they're used to having so much brightness around their face. I always say wait as long as you can, and then when you absolutely can't stand it, then come back.
Yeah.
Like everyone can stand it at different points, but I do often get those girls that are used to being so light, and they come in with a super short root.
Yeah. And
I can't foil it, or I don't want to just root melt it, because I feel like root melting is a really great kind of add-on for me. Like, it's not the only solution.
So we have another question. How can we keep those clients coming into the salon between balayages?
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
I like that. A lot of my clients will come in for a glossing service. So that's when you mix 1 part post-color treatment to 1 part of your color, and then 1 part 6 volume. And a glossing service is really just going to kind of give a bit of tone, but a ton of shine. And it's going to just gloss what they have existing. So I feel like when you're blonde, your hair can go dull after, a month or 2. And a glossing service is a really great way to kind of bring that balayage back to life. Because it's a lower maintenance look, but the rest of the hair still needs a bit of attention.
Definitely. Yeah.
Do you do that often, Nichelle?
I do. I love the glossing service because it is a quick add-on at the back bar. It takes 5 to 10 minutes, and it's a great way to, like you said, refresh your blondes, but it's also a great way to refresh your all-over color clients or your gray coverage color clients in between services, and it just adds a ton of shine. It's a good pick-me-up, and it's really quick. So I love the glossing service.
Yeah, I think this technique is really great too, because I get a lot of clients who, when they want to transition into a low maintenance look, they're really hesitant to put anything on the top. Like they're really hesitant to do a root smudge, for example, because they don't want to now add color to their natural hair. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a really great way to preserve the natural and create that organic blend that we want out of a balayage.
Yeah, yeah. And you're back to work in the salon. How have you been finding it with your color clients? Have they started transitioning to a more low maintenance look, or?
You know what? I've been getting, so far I've been getting, everyone just wants a change. So a lot of them want to go lighter. And they're kind of just happy to be back. Like I haven't really had anyone that's like, now that we're back, let's do something low maintenance yet. They're kind of just like, let's do the highlights. Like, let's do the balayage. Let's do the works. Like everyone that comes in is doing the works.
Awesome. That's good.
So it's been good. It's been really good. But I haven't yet had the girls that are like, now that I have so much root, let's preserve it. I haven't had that yet. I think everyone's just happy to have their hair done.
Yeah, that's great. So we have another question. It is, what is the difference between a root smudge and a root melt? Please explain. I have an answer for this too, but I'll let you go first, Zeina.
You go first. You take that one.
Okay, so for me personally, when I think of a root smudge, I'm thinking of just like a dropped root. So I'm only dropping the root maybe an inch, no more than that. I'm just kind of smudging out their root line so it gives a softer grow out. And then a root melt would be where I'm pulling it down further. So I'm pulling it down 2, 3, 4 inches, and I'm actually melting their roots and creating a lot more depth in it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
What about you, Zeina?
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think if this girl came in and I wasn't doing this and like we were root smudging her or whatever, like because she's so blonde, I wouldn't take a lot of dark through her without brightening some of these pieces, because she's just going to feel so dark compared to what she's used to. Like she already has this coming in. So to like add too much depth without brightening some pieces, I think would make her feel really dark.
Yeah.
That was a good question.
That was a great question. Yeah. And for your balayage, how high do you take it up to the root usually?
That would depend on my consultation with my clients. In this situation, I get this a lot where this girl who's used to being super blonde wants a change, and she'll literally show me like the exact opposite of what she is, and the dark is down to here, and you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you get that a lot. So often, because this client is so light, I will usually keep it pretty high and pretty light, especially around her face, because I wouldn't want to freak her out. I think balayage is one of those things that is super tailored to the individual client and looks different on everybody. And for some reason, all the inspo pics, people have a different interpretation of all of them. I don't know why, but to me, if a girl that was used to being super light showed me a picture of a balayage, and if it was super dark and super contrasted, I'd keep some lightness, especially around her face, higher up.
Yeah, Chelsea had a great answer too. A melt can also refer to melting dark into light from the roots to ends, and usually done in a toning capacity, which totally. And sometimes when I'm doing like a melt or a smudge, I'll do a combination of the both, where I melt more in the back to create that depth, but then I smudge or tap in the front to keep that money piece really bright. So you can always combine the two as well.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Yeah.
So again, this piece is super thick, so I separated it because I'm kind of looking at it as two separate pieces. So like through this area here, I maybe want more depth through the back, and through here, because it's around her face, maybe I want my depth to be like a bit higher up or a bit in the middle, rather than a lot of depth where it would be more focused in the back, I would say. So I'm kind of looking at these as two separate areas and two separate pieces.
So we have a question. The question is, how long should a service like this take? That's a great question.
That's a really great question. I book 75 minutes. I don't know, how long do you book, Nichelle?
Just for application or?
Yeah, I booked. Yeah, that was my answer for application.
For application, yeah, probably about an hour 15 or an hour and a half. It kind of depends on how much hair the client has. So if it's somebody new that I haven't had in my chair yet, I'll usually do an hour and a half just to be safe.
Imagine it was 75 minutes for everything.
Oh
Jeez,
gosh. You'd be a
I'd
rock
be either,
star.
I'd be either the worst hairdresser ever or the best hairdresser ever. I don't know. I don't know which one, but okay. So I've applied my lightener a bit thicker around the front here, just because I would like more lift around her face. And usually when someone has highlights, they do have some depth through the middle here. So I'm just applying it a bit thicker through here because I want to see more lightness. And then I'm going to, again, like create my V. Sorry.
That's okay. You're back.
Technical difficulties. I had a bit of technical difficulties for a minute.
Yeah, no worries.
So again, I'm going to take my V and I'm going to just kind of unload my brush more in the middle here just to get some of that off. And then before I move on to those ends here, I'm just going to take my low lights and just lightly apply that through that middle section there where we want to see some depth that she's missing. Just like that.
That's beautiful.
So it's almost like giving, like, as if she didn't have highlights. We're getting rid of some of that there. Mm-hmm. And then through those ends there, I'm not saturating them. I'm just really lightly painting them. Just to get a bit of brightness, but no lift, just very lightly. So I'm actually not flipping my section over and checking my section, and I'm not kind of doing that like I normally would with the paint, because I'm not pushing I'm not trying to get both sides there. I'm just kind of painting the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you find the fade out is when you see them the next time with the low light that you put in?
I feel like over time, because the whole point is to start to let their natural come through. So as they wash it and whatever, I think it actually starts to look more organic. And even the next time when they get their hair done, when their roots are longer, maybe when we bring it up, maybe we don't need a low light because we'll use their natural as the low light. So this is just to create a blend between their natural and the rest of their hair.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm going to do with this section is I just applied my lightener through the one side there, and I think I want to add some depth just in the back because I want it to kind of cascade. So I'm going to just add my low light. Can you guys see?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
For you guys that just joined, right now Zeina is taking us through doing a highlight service to balayage using a freehand painting technique. So she's using free lights, clay lightener, and a lumina color to create a highlight and a low light using a freehand painting technique.
There we go. So when we look at that, you can really see kind of how it's gonna look when it's all done, which is what I love about a free paint, is you really see where it's gonna go and what it's gonna look like before it's even processed.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Do you ever use separators in between your sections, or?
So with free lights, we don't need to use separators, but sometimes, sometimes I do. I use saran wrap, but we don't need to. And with this technique, sometimes I won't use separators because separators can add a bit more heat, and we really don't need any lift at all to this. So we just need a bit of deposit and a bit of brightness and like kind of clean up the tone a little bit, but we really don't need any lift.
Yeah. Yeah. So Hair by Sandra asked what brand lightener you're using. So she is using Free Lights by Wella. It's the clay lightener from Wella, and she's using it with a 20 volume developer.
So again, I'm really using my line of demarcation as my guide here on how kind of high up to take this, because we still want her to feel like she has a Rudy look. Like that's what she wants, right? She doesn't want to feel like she has highlights. So I'm kind of using that as my guide, and I'm just kind of blending out that line of demarcation just a little bit. So I feel like with the clay lightener, I have a lot of control, so I can kind of blend that out so much easier with a lift and over direction of the section, compared to if I were to try to foil it or do a foliage somehow. Like that root is so short. So with a clay lightener, you can really get in there and diffuse that root.
So Hair by Sandra, she asked how many levels of lift, and with any of our lighteners in the portfolio, you can get up to 7 levels of lift, but always keep in mind in a freehand technique, the lift is going to depend on where your kind of starting level is and what you're putting it on.
So yeah, often when I use Free Lights clay lightener, probably about like 80% of the time I'm using 40 volume. This is like the one instance where I'm doing this technique because she's blonde already that I've decided to go in with 20 volume. Like we really don't need 40 volume or even 30 volume for this technique, for this application, because she has blonde highlights already. We're just kind of using it to clean up what's there and clean up that tone and just brighten her up a little bit. So like I always say, when using a clay lightener, it's sometimes people are hesitant because it's a slower lift than multi-blonde powder or like Blonderplex, for example. But I think it's really just knowing when to use it and who to use it on. So this is a really great scenario to use Free Lights because we don't need a lot of lift, but we're really creating that organic shape that we're going to get out of a balayage.
Yeah. And what I like to see too is even though you're not trying to create a ton of lift, you still have a nice heavy saturation, which is going to help add in or aid in lifting.
Yeah, so I'm really saturating a lot more with my lightener, like through the mids here, where maybe I could do with a bit more lift, or she's a bit, I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but she's a lot more yellowy through the mids here. So my saturation is heavier there. And then where her ends, where she's super light, which is pretty common with most blondes, where they've had a lot of overlap, I'm barely saturating it. I'm just really kind of brushing it on just to give it very soft lightening.
Yeah, that's a great tip, like playing around with your saturation to either lift it more or lift it less. I think a lot of people don't always think of that. That's a great tip. Yeah, we got a yay, Zeina.
Oh, hi, Tony. Okay, so with this last piece here, this is like her money shot pretty much. I'm just going to, again, like over direct it back just to give me some control. And I'm just going to be a bit heavier with my paint in that mid area where she's more yellowy. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but it's much more yellowy there. And then just kind of use that line of demarcation as my guide, just so I can diffuse that line a little bit. I know exactly where to bring that paint up. And I'm bringing it a bit higher around the front because that's where usually people want to see some brightness. So I'm unloading my brush in the mids here. Sorry, I guess you can't really see it, can you? Here we go.
There we go.
I'm unloading my brush kind of in the middle there just to get rid of some product. And then I'm just using like the excess just to brush that up, just so we're not getting a whole lot of products through there. It just helps with that blend.
Yeah. Chelsea asked, what is the Manny's name?
This is actually Joni from our Root Melt Live.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is Joni. So she's getting a revamping.
She decided she wanted to change.
She wanted to change. She's coming out of quarantine. She was jealous of her twin sister, Judy, and she decided that she wanted her hair done too. Because after the live, I didn't do anything nice for her.
Yeah, she's feeling neglected.
She's jealous.
That's funny.
So Just because this is the front here, I just want a bit more brightness. So I'm just gonna take the tip of my brush and I'm just gonna kind of like almost W that, I guess you could say. Like I'm just gonna give it a bit more here. But I'm leaving some areas to add some depth. So I'm just taking the tip of my brush again and I'm just kind of lightly feathering that on because we don't need a lot of saturation there. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to take my low light and I'm just going to lightly feather that as well.
Beautiful.
So like I was saying before, if this isn't like your way of, if this is too much because there's all like everything's kind of on one piece together, you can always kind of weave it out and separate it and look at it like that. It might be a bit easier sometimes to have two separate, like one section for the low light and one section for the highlight, and then just kind of separate it like that. And then I'm just really lightly painting the ends here. There you go. So there's that side.
Looks good. So we have a question. When you get to the back of the head, do you also use diagonal sections? And I think that's where you were just going to go. So
that's a great question. Well, I'll explain the back a little bit because I think we're almost out of time. But yeah, so with the back, I would probably split this down the middle because this is a really big section. Can you guys see? Maybe I'll raise her up.
Yeah, just raise her up a little bit.
There we go. That's perfect. All right, so with the back here, I kind of split her down the middle just to have better control over the hair because it's really hard to control such a massive section. And so we can really see those lines of demarcation there in the back. And I would continue on with a diagonal section just because we want to keep her nice and soft. So often when I'm working the back, I will work side by side. I won't do one side and then the other. Like I will do both sides together, and then that way I can make sure that I'm nice and balanced. So yeah, there we go. So I would kind of start in the back here with my diagonal sections, and you want to elevate and over direct the back to get control out of the back too. So often I'm going to get her to bend forward because I'm pretty short, so I need people to work for me a little bit, especially when I'm doing a balayage. She's resisting. Okay, so anyway, I would take my section and over direct that, and same as the front, you just kind of want to paint exactly where you want to see your light, and then don't forget to paint where you want to see your depth too. So we usually want to see our depth in the middle there. I think with the back, I will typically go a bit deeper with our low light and just add a bit more depth in that back there just to give her some more contrast, but still keep some pieces fairly high up and continue with using my demarcation line as my guide.
Mm-hmm. And would you go split up the middle all the way up the back, or would you change when you get to the crown?
When I get to the crown, because it tends to be a smaller section at that point, I tend to kind of look at it as one section, or I might just take smaller sections so I can over direct it and kind of like, you want some depth through that middle there.
Yeah.
The crown. Sorry, can you guys see that? She's a little stiff.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great advice. Awesome.
So guys, I'm going to have to finish the back off camera, and then we can post the results later on. Because yes, I don't think I have enough time to do the back, so I'll have to do this separately.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you guys want to see the finished result, Zeina is going to post it on her Instagram when it is finished. So you can go follow her at Z Hair Warrior. And if you wanted to give me a follow, my Instagram is The Hair Niche. And then don't forget to go follow Wella Canada West, and make sure you're also following Modern as well. So thank you so much, Modern, for having us again today. I hope everybody enjoyed the live. This will be saved on Instagram TV, so if you guys want to go back and watch it, you can go right ahead on there. And yeah, did you have anything to add, Zeina?
If you guys ever have any questions about this, because this, it's really hard to show the entire technique, you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to Nichelle, slide into the DMs and ask us any other questions that maybe we didn't answer. Or if you watch this back and you have some more questions that arise, feel free to message either one of us. We love your questions. And thank you so much to Modern Beauty Supply.
Yes, thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Bye, guys.